Welcome to the Helping Conversation, an exploration and celebration of the practice, art, and science of facilitating trusting, safe, inclusive, and effective helping conversations with others. Recorded at RockVox Recording and Production Studios, Rochester, New York, Mouth Off at RockVox, rockvox.com. Having enjoyed an almost 40-year career facilitating his own authentic brand of the helping conversation, your host, Executive and Recovery Coach, Keith Greer.
Welcome, everybody, and thank you, as always, for making the time to sit in with me today on another episode of the Helping Conversation. I am incredibly excited about our guest today for a few different reasons. First of all, as all of you know, as we have all been living through COVID and watching the impact on not-for-profit programs and other organizations, we all know the importance for these kinds of entities to be very successful in their fundraising. And that is probably as paramount as it has ever been at this moment, as so many organizations are having difficulty. And so there's going to be a component of the conversation today that is about fundraising. And some of you might be asking, well, what does that have to do with the helping conversation? Well, the other part of my excitement today is that as I was noodling around with this idea for this podcast, I really wanted it to focus not just on the people that you would automatically assume are helping people. So people like me as a coach or a therapist, other clinicians, counselors. I really wanted this program to highlight a cross-section of people who engage in their own unique, authentic brand of helping others, even if it's outside the realm of what many of us would think about as helping people. And so today, I have this very special guest who has agreed to spend some time with us, who I think fits that description of not coming from your traditional helping folk, but nonetheless, I think you're going to find does some pretty amazing work. And I promise I'll make a connection between that and my first few words about organizations and fundraising. So I would ask you to join me in giving a very warm welcome to my guest today, Shelly St John. Hey, Shelly.
Hi, thank you so much. It's so great to see you, and I really appreciate being here with you. I'm looking forward to the conversation as well, because I think there are certain je ne sais quoi things about helping and the helping conversation and about what you do. But I think that in our core, 90% of us as humans want to help others.
No question. No question. I agree with you wholeheartedly. Let me share with everybody a little bit about who you are. Shelly St John is the founder of Shelly St John Inspires and the Auction Divas. She is a keynote speaker, speaker performance coach, and fundraising auctioneer, working to help people build their businesses and attract new clients and donors through her programs, Auction Fundraising Growth Strategy Hacks, and badass, all in caps, love that, public speaking. Appearing as an auctioneer, Emcee, and speaker at over 700 events, Shelly is no stranger to the stage. As an entrepreneur who has spent 20 plus years in her marketing firm and 14 years as an auctioneer, Shelly has spent her lifetime learning how to read an audience and to influence the way they react. Her focus is to train speakers and fundraisers to connect, again, all in caps, with their audience, large or small, to help their listeners make decisions and take action on their message. Shelly has appeared in front of a variety of different audiences, including Greater Giving of San Antonio, the Association of Fundraising Professionals, Doing Good Foundation, and the Colorado Arts and Technology Panel. I mentioned that she has been in front of 700 audiences and to date has helped to raise $125 million for charity. Again, welcome, Shelly St John.
Thank you. Don't you love how I strategically scream at people with capital letters?
Yes. I noticed that, right? Right?
Yes.
It definitely gets the message across.
That's right.
So again, thank you. And I'm so excited about this conversation because when you and I initially connected, the first thing that popped into my head is, okay, so I've seen auctioneers, but you immediately started talking about some of the science behind it, which is, again, is music to my ears. That's the stuff I love. So before we jump into that, I always invite my guests to get started by just sharing a little bit of what your journey has been, from where your career started to how you got to where you are now.
Wow, it's a long story, and there are a lot of little years tied together between the two. I owned a marketing company. I'd always done marketing and PR from the time I was a child. My mother was an entrepreneur, and I started at 13 years old answering phones in her office. So I really had that entrepreneurial bug. And my life went on, and I went to school and traveled around the country for a few years. And then in my 20s, it was time for me to go back to Minnesota and stop gallivanting all over the world. And I went into the hotel business and quickly rose to the top in my department, in my field, got transferred, and marketing and PR was what became a natural for me. Being in front of an audience, talking to people, and whether your audience is 1 or 100,000 or anything in between, it's really looking to connect with that audience. It's not about what you have and what you have to offer. It's about what someone else wants and needs. So that just led me to where I was at a point where I began my own company in in Texas. Then I opened another branch in Michigan when we moved there. And then I opened my final company in marketing here in Denver. And then about 2005, I had a life change. And I thought, golly, I think there's something new and different that I want to do. And I literally tripped over my size 10 feet into becoming an auctioneer. And here I am 14 years later.
That's awesome. So you mentioned something when you started that you believe that 90% of us in some shape or fashion are out there helping others.
Oh my gosh, yes.
So I'm always curious with my guests, if we went back to childhood, and I'm not doing family therapy here, but I'm just always curious about something. If we went back to when you were a child, what would you say would be some of the evidence of things you did, the way you carried yourself, what was important to you, that was evidence that you were going to be one of those helping people in adulthood?
So my actual childhood, I can't really put a finger on that, but I can frame that. And I was thinking about this in preparing for our conversation today. Two individuals stuck out in my life from my, let's say, 18 to 21 age.
Okay.
One was a homeless guy named Jack. And Jack ran the parking lot next to the all-Christian girls' dorm that I lived in downtown Minneapolis. And Jack and I became amazing friends. And we used to go to concerts together. I would invite him to do this. I would invite him for dinner, and we just became really good friends. And you wouldn't think that this girl who's going to finishing school and modeling school and wearing furs down a runway would make friends with a homeless guy that hung out in a parking structure all day, right? But I helped him really get his life on track, even though I was so new at getting my life on track.
Right.
And then there was another gal named Stacy. And I knew her when I lived in Chicago, and she was about my age, and she had a toddler. And she was struggling with, trying to be young and vivacious and be in career and live like she was single, but she had a toddler and a responsibility. So I guess I found myself throughout my lifetime being having people that needed help be attracted to me. And I think, too, that's because I'm an empath. And because I'm an empath, everyone's pain becomes my pain. Everyone's fear becomes my fear. And it's taken me a lot of years to be able to understand what that meant. 30 years ago, I didn't know what an empath was. right? And now that I do, and I can understand the traits and characteristics of how I grew up, how that all makes sense, and how those individuals are continually attracted to me.
Right.
And I'm drawn to help.
So that's always, that's a very powerful word. And I know it conjures up different kinds of thoughts for different people. So how would you define what it means to be an empath?
Well, on the clinical side, if you will, it's kind of a lonely life because there's a lot of fear. There's a lot of pain involved. When you see someone who needs something, your heart just goes right into their pain, right into who they are, right? And you will do fiercely loyal. I would do anything to help the people that I care about and love not feel so much pain, right? So it's kind of a lonely existence from that standpoint, but it's really amazing not to sit in a chair and judge, but to sit in a chair and really pay attention to your intuition. Pay attention to what you hear and what you feel, not just what you see. Right. So it's, I think it's a blessing and a curse.
Yeah. It's, one of the ways I've always tended to frame being an empath or being empathic, the act of empathy, is it's a truly courageous act. Because many people, it's interesting, I always find many people think empathy is a shared experience, like we share the same experience, but it's not. It's what you're saying. It's shared emotion. And so the courage it takes for someone who is empathic to give themselves permission to go to that place of pain it's an astronomical act to do. And I would agree with you. It has some difficulties attached to it, and it has some gifts attached to it.
That's right. And I think as we get older and as we get wiser in that age, it's really amazing to be able to look at your life and look at those experiences and then be able to shape that experience so that it's more joyful in every transaction, if you will. Yes.
Which is in and of itself contagious. That we can bring that joy and share that with others, right? And right, kind of be that beam of light.
And that's been, if you look back in the last year and a half, that's been a real challenge for people.
Yes,
right?
It has, right?
Goodness gracious. Last May, I was one of those individuals, and I am the ultimate optimist, right? The glass is always nearly overflowing, right? And last May, I would find myself vacillating moments throughout the day, many moments of sheer terror to it's all going to be okay.
Yeah.
Right? And, luckily for me that those vacillating moments have gotten farther and farther apart from one another.
Right.
Instead of 10 times a day, it's, once or twice a month, but it still comes in. And I think when it comes to mental health, and I've raised hundreds of thousands of dollars for mental health in my auction career, it's one of those helping conversations that kind of get pushed under a rug.
Right.
It's someone's dirty little secret, and it should not be.
Right.
And so I think to pair that with the optimism and the empathy, it's really, how can you be of service in the world? Yeah. And that's 90% of us as humans. How can we help our children learn better? How can we help our family live better, healthier, right? And then, of course, it's the clinical things. Who do I want to help? Who do I want to volunteer? How do I live this healthy life? How do I share those gifts with others?
Right. I appreciate what you just said. I appreciate the honesty, the courage, and the vulnerability to talk about the fact that even as someone who perceives herself as a supreme optimist, that there have been moments through this pandemic where where it's really tough to stay positive. Because as you were talking about that, I completely related with every single word you said. I'm a big optimist. My family has always accused me of being the ultimate Pollyanna. I see the bright side and the good of things and the good in everybody. And I've had moments through the last few months where it was tough. It was tough to hold on to that. But even being able to share that with other people and normalize that, right? Normalize that through this period of time, we're all going to have moments where it's a bit tough to be positive 24/7.
And I think the biggest lesson I learned in all of that, which again, I had to learn this. It was not in my DNA in April, May, and June.
Right.
But as the months went on, I began to realize that when I felt that tear, when I felt that fear, I had to lean into it. If I tried to push it away, or if I tried to put it in that little box in my brain and shut the door and lock the key and just leave it there, then it was still existing. So if I was sad, I had to lean into that sadness.
Right.
And I think that doubt and fear will kill more dreams than failing ever would. And so I think that that's the real message in sharing that is lean into it. Allow yourself. If you have the ability and you're sad, stay in bed and binge watch something stupid on Netflix, right? Or take a nap, or, whatever read a book, whatever that mindless space that you can get into, and then just be open to the messages that come.
Right.
Listen to your divinity, to your divine, to whatever belief you have, and it will subside.
Yeah.
But don't be angry, don't be mad, and don't be upset with yourself when it happens.
Right. Right. Because that's that whole meta level, right? So I have these feelings, and then I have feelings about my feelings, which are often very judgmental. And we do ourselves such a disservice versus what you're saying is take that first line of feelings you have, even if it's doubt and fear, and lean into it and experience it and give yourself permission to have it. Because anything beyond that moves into the realm of self-judgment sure is not doing anything good.
That's absolutely right. And I imagine there are many of your listeners that fall into my camp, which is I am absolutely harder on myself than anyone else in the world.
Yeah, well, welcome to being a human being, right?
Right? Exactly. Wait, it's perfection. And that's I think what many of us strive for, and that a lot holds us back. But I've come to realize too that perfection equals the ego.
Yeah.
And neither of them should take a front seat in our lives.
Right. Doesn't work well.
No.
Doesn't work well. So listen, I want to jump into your career as an auctioneer because it just so fascinates me. So you mentioned when we started that it was somewhere along the line that your career was moving along, and then all of a sudden you found yourself up there on the stage as an auctioneer. So that alone has me curious. Like, how do you go from I've never been an auctioneer to all of a sudden I'm up in front of an audience and that's the gig?
It's interesting, and I'll try to keep this long story short.
Okay.
I had a life change in 2005. I got divorced after 15 years, no kids. My marketing company, I had a wonderful first floor storefront office in a great space in downtown Denver, had a staff. We were kicking butt, taking names, and I had really good real estate clients, and life was good. And there was something in the back of my mind that kept saying, is there something more? You've already had this huge life change. Is there another change? And one Saturday afternoon, I was at home surfing channels, and I landed on a discovery segment of a husband and wife team that went to real estate school to sell real estate at auction. And there wasn't a delay. When I saw that, there wasn't even a delay in my mind. I went, well, I can do that. I might be good at that. And I started doing some research, the fastest growing of liquidating real estate in the country. And this was about 2005, 2006. So marketing was still my job and my career, but I went to real estate school, got my real estate license, got trained as an auctioneer, and over a 3-4 year period, transitioned out of marketing and into auctioneering full time.
Awesome. And so tell us a little bit about what is involved in being a successful auctioneer.
Wow. Every auctioneer is different. The way that most auctioneers do business is different because there are heavy equipment auctioneers. There are car and auto auctioneers. There are charity auctioneers, real estate auctioneers.
So it's really a niche business in some ways.
Well, to focus, I think that most auctioneers have one major niche and then branch out a little bit.
Right.
There are, in the last, I'd say 5 years, there is a larger percentage of individuals choosing just charity than ever before.
Right.
When I became an auctioneer in the mid thousands, in Denver, I was a small handful of charity auctioneers that's all we did. And that was even a smaller handful of the females that did it.
So
right?
let me ask you this. At that moment, as you're saying, because auctioneers can specialize, pick some areas that they have a bit more expertise in, what went into your decision to really focus in the world of charity?
I had volunteered on and off throughout my life. And I had a lesson from my father who taught me how to give back, but it took me nearly 30 some years to figure out the lesson that he tried to teach me. And so giving back, volunteering had been part of my core and who I was for a period of 10 or 15 years.
Right.
So when it came to auctioning and it came to doing live events, I was already going to galas as a sponsor, as I would donate PR, marketing services. So I was already in that life, just not as an auctioneer. And I used to watch those auctioneers with awe going, wow, that is so cool. Never thinking for a second that I would be joining them on stage.
Right.
Until it all it's the divinity that happened. The divine stepped in and said, here's a path. Should you choose to take it, you might be good at it. Right. And that's kind of how it happened. And giving back in that kind of way is bigger for me than any kind of marketing I could do or any kind of one-off PR that I could donate to one event. Because I actually am helping contribute to the fulfillment of their mission,
right,
of tens of thousands of people a year.
Right. All right. So for us people who know nothing about being an auctioneer other than you're the folks who speak really fast,
yes,
break down what some of the skills are that a person would need to have to be really effective in this role.
So there are two types of skill sets. One is more the operations and the consulting, and one is the performing. So one of the terms that I coined early on when I became this charity auctioneer is I consider myself more of a performer than I do an auctioneer, quote, unquote, right? Because my job when I take the stage is to create this magical experience for the audience, to be able to communicate, talk, entertain, and get the attention and keep the attention of 50 to 5,000 people.
Right.
Right. So it's an entertainer's mentality. It's to love being seen. It's to love communicating, to be able to help people laugh, to be able to explain complex concepts simply so that people can understand them in the moment, and be able to draw that all together into a performance that converts into fundraising.
Right.
Which, I have to tell you, prior to the pandemic, I every day that I'm out and about, I used to talk to people about becoming an auctioneer, because I don't believe it's a skill that you have like a musician has practiced for years, right? You don't have to have practiced being an auctioneer for years to be good at entertaining. You have to be gregarious and funny and lovable and laughable. And then the operations part of it is to be able to learn the techniques that nonprofits, schools, and religious organizations should understand and deploy, and then be able to plan their events so that they are taking advantage of their audience's values, likes, and dislikes throughout the entire event, creating a really warm, safe, and comfortable spot for people to be generous.
When you talk about being aware of audience likes and dislikes, what is that?
So I call it demographics. And it's not just in fundraising. This concept is valid for someone having coffee with someone they've never met, for a salesperson, for a manager. It's understanding your audience on a core level. Because when you understand them to that deep of a level, you can change the outcome of that conversation. Mm. I mean, imagine you were a salesperson and you had a cold call with someone, and you were more interested in telling them about this crazy, amazing ski weekend you had than learning about who they were, their values, their family, right?
Right.
So understanding your audience on a core level helps you do that. And there are clinical demographics, there are cultural subtleties, there are the little fine points of each generation, and understanding how they communicate, what their main value systems are, and then pairing it together with an overall audience, and then being able to perform to each audience individually.
Right.
Because that keeps a better engagement of a total audience.
So I'm sitting here listening to you, and I'm thinking in my head, what's the equivalent of what you're talking about for somebody like me who's in the more traditional helping profession, when I sit down with a person for the first time, and I hear you saying and practicing all of the skills and concepts that people like me use. So I start where my client is at. I listen deeply. I suspend any judgment on my part. I'm more interested in hearing your story than telling my story. Right? I see you as a resource in your life, not just as an object. I listen for difference, cultural, ethnic, gender difference, things like that. I hear you doing all of the same things, and the only difference is you're up, probably on a podium in front of 20,000 people.
Well, that's right. So and I've shared this with you, that I have written an online course called Event Fundraising Growth Strategy Hacks. And the first module I call the psych of fundraising. Mm. Because that's what it is, and that's what you do, right? But it's what everyone does. I just don't think they label it, or maybe get to go deep enough into it. But you have to understand the psychology of people, right, in order to get what you want, or get what your client wants, or make people happy.
Right. So here's one of the things I'm curious about in how you go about this. I'm a bit of a nut in my work, both my personal work as well as the training that I do, on some of the latest and greatest in the research world of how we understand how quickly us human beings perceive a sense of trust, safety, and inclusion, or the opposite of, threat.
Right.
Now, again, I know what I do when I work with an individual, or I do some corporate training and I'm up in front of, maybe 25 people or something like that. So I'm envisioning you, again, up on a stage in front of a much larger audience. You're walking out there, and on some level, you have to do the same thing. You have to relatively quickly help people perceive you as trusting and safe and authentic.
That's right.
Right. So I'm curious, just like, what are some of the things that you do in that area from the moment the light comes up and you start your performance?
So that begins with the first step in reading your audience. I was doing an event at a special event property. This was a couple of years back. And the room was crazy. It was loud. It was noisy. People were drinking and having a great time and hooting and hollering. And it was just nuts. And I got up to stage. And in that split second of taking the stairs up to the stage and walking center stage, I had a split second decision to make. And that was, if I don't come out big as life and loud and obnoxious, I will never get their attention, and I will never be able to successfully complete my task. So that's what I did. I came out, and I don't remember exactly what I said, but I grabbed that mic and what are you doing? Are you having fun? I mean, I was screaming, and all of a sudden the room got quiet because I matched and mirrored what was happening in the audience. Likewise, another event a couple of years ago, this is a longtime client, first time I'd ever done the event. There's 400 people in the room. It's a Waldorf school, and they're very conservative and very refined and very contained. I mean, they're dining and they're drinking wine, but it's a very calm audience. And the speakers got up and did their thing, and it was my turn to take the stage and fundraise. And again, that split-second decision. Had I been as loud as I was at the event I just described,
yeah, you're done.
I'd have lost everyone. Yeah. I came out and I just went, hey, how are you tonight? You all look lovely.
Right.
And I raised more money for them than they'd ever raised in the history of their event. So that's number one, is reading the audience and the situation and knowing that you need to be on that level in order to begin that connection and that trust.
Yeah. So again, in my world, just to make those connections, in my world, they often talk about the importance of walking in and matching the communication pattern of the person in front of you. Right?
I always knew there was a clinical definition.
Right. It's the same thing of just being very aware of that in the name of building trust, right, and safety in the room, and exactly the same thing.
You know, one of the things I share with every audience is that when we get down to the fundraising, it is never about one individual. It's never about those top 5% donors that could do it all in 30 seconds. It's about the collective power of the work that the people in the room have the opportunity to do.
Right.
It's the help that they get to complete in that moment. And I think that takes away a little bit of the stress on those larger donors. I mean, clearly we need those larger donors to step up, but it's not just about them. They're not the only people that I pay attention to.
Yeah. So the other part of being an auctioneer that I'm curious about, and so I'm the president of my faith community, and you know, like every other faith community, we're always fundraising on some level, right?
Right.
And you know, the amount of knowledge I have about fundraising, you can hold in a small cup, but what I do know is there's this whole piece about getting people to share their story, getting them to talk about why their connection to whatever organization is so meaningful to them, because then that makes the issue around them maybe donating money less transactional, right? They're talking about it coming from their meaning. So I wanted to share something really quickly from some of the information you sent me about yourself, because it really struck me. And this is a quote from some of Shelly's information. And she says, storytelling is the foundation of everything we do, from sharing love or communicating an issue to selling a product or service. In recent history, we as a people had all but forgotten how to share our stories in an authentic and real way. Shelly uses storytelling to talk about real issues that people are facing in their personal lives, business, and charitable event giving, then provides solutions through story. So I'm curious, in your role as an auctioneer, how you use story or other skills to speak to the audience in a way that invites them to think about the meaningfulness of their connection to whatever organization you are up there representing?
So there are three different things that I want to touch on, and they will all come together in what we call in the theater world a through line, okay, which is the beginning to the end of the story, right? So storytelling in its simplest form has three parts, just like many of us in Gen Xers and baby boomers learned how to write letters in school, in elementary school. There's the situation. What is happening? What has led someone there? What is the state of affairs? And then it's the conflict. Why is there a need? What happens? What's the risk of not getting involved? What's the risk of not giving? Where is that conflict? That's the real juicy part. And that's what really opens up someone's emotion in their gut, is the conflict. Oh, I feel so bad for them. I want to help, right? And then it's the resolution. So in good storytelling, it's the situation, the conflict, and the resolution. So that's an overall picture of storytelling. And the through line is taking someone from the top of the situation down to the bottom of the resolution, and then getting them to take the action that you want them to take. So for events, when I first began as an auctioneer, most organizations would have, whether they called them clients or patients, but people who had been helped by that specific organization, come up and do a speech.
Right.
And it would be a one-way speech where that individual would push information out to the audience. And very quickly, I realized in the first few years that many of those individuals, they're not professional speakers, they're not entertainers. So while they had incredible stories to tell, they might have been too soft, or they get deer in the headlights and they lose their lines of where they're supposed to be, or God forbid, they're reading from a paper and forgetting to connect with the audience. So I crafted this process. It's a 3-step process. And what I prefer to do is interview those people, because what we found is that an audience would rather get involved and engaged in a conversation versus a one-way speech. So there are typically 3 questions that I ask these individuals. And of course, we've had conversations in the past. So they've had a minute to understand the questions and think about what their answers, they want those answers to be. But basically, the first question is, what happened and how did you find the need? And that question can be modified, whether you're raising money for a homeless shelter, an animal shelter, kids with cancer, a neurological disease, a religious organization, a school, what have you, right? The second question is, once you found the need, how did you find the organization? If it's a school or a nonprofit. And the third question is the money shot, but it is the question that everyone wants to hear the answer to. And that is, where do you think you'd be today had you not found the organization and been a gracious recipient of their help? And again, those 3 questions can be, modified to be specific for the organization, but they will tell the story quickly and succinctly on any stage in front of any fundraiser. That's
awesome. The other thing that strikes me about that is it takes, and again, the parallels with what we do in the more traditional helping role, it takes the focus off of us as the so-called expert. And it invites people into the story, and it allows them to be the expert, to show their expertise through those 3 questions, right? And to talk about how this organization brought meaning into their lives. I would agree with you. I can't imagine anything else you or anyone else up on a stage could say that would be more powerful than that.
And they are the 3 pillars of storytelling.
Right.
Situation, the conflict, and the resolution. And that people need that. They need to hear all of it to inspire them to feel with their emotions, to activate their thinking.
Right.
And then their emotions and their thought process will culminate in action.
Right.
Now, that action is not always the action you want them to take.
Okay.
But it is an action, right?
Right. The other thing is you were talking about those parts of a story, situation, conflict resolution, and then you added the fourth one, action step. I'm telling you, Shelly, I'm sitting here thinking about how was I trained to be a coach, and I was trained in a coaching structure that essentially says, okay, in any session with any of my clients, the conversation starts with present state. Where are you today? Right. And then we talk maybe a little bit about how that is working for them or not working for them. There's the conflict. And then we move on to some level of, all right, so where do you want to go? How do you want to move forward? Right. There's a little bit about the resolution. And by the end of every coaching session, I ask for action steps. What are you going to do between now and the next time we get together? It's the story.
It is. And, there are so many different storytellers out there, and there's the hero complex, and there are, different methodologies,
right.
the arrowhead. But the reality is they're all the same. They might use a different buzzword to make it unique, but this is really it. Most of the movies that you see, the books that you read, they all follow the 3-act structure.
Right.
There's a movie called The Irishman. It came out, I don't know, last year sometime.
Right. With
I got to watch it over the beginning part of the pandemic. And it was incredible to me because I could see the switch. Here's the situation. Oh, now they're getting into the conflict. Oh, it must be coming to the end because now they're getting to the resolution.
Right.
So it's incredible. The simplicity of it is what makes it incredibly powerful.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah, lots of parallels, Shelly. Lots of parallels between what you do.
Great. And you have a degree in psychology or something, or a master's or a doctorate.
Yeah.
I'm an auctioneer and an interior designer. Yeah.
Yeah, I always tell people, sometimes, and maybe in my field, the letters maybe get you in the door, but then they don't mean anything. Right. Then it's about, just like with you, it's the skill set you bring. It's the person you are. It's your passion for what you do. Right. That moves you forward.
You've got to have that passion in whatever it is. Because that's what people see.
Right.
They see that energy. They feel the passion, and they feel that you're powerful. But, going back to that empath thing, you have to be careful of that too.
Yes.
And you have to be mindful, because if there were any mistakes that I have made in any of my careers, that's caring too much.
Yeah.
And I know that that's been true in my auction career, because I can see so clearly from having done as many events as I've done, from having fantastic victories to incredible blunders.
Right.
I can see what these groups need to do, but I push and I educate, and sometimes I'm a little too much. So I've had to learn that if someone doesn't want to buy into it and they don't think that that's valuable, well,
let it go.
That's their choice.
Yeah.
Right.
But
that was hard. Right. It was real hard.
Right.
To learn.
So again, parallel in my world is one of the things that I sometimes talk to coaches who I'm training about, is we cannot have, in some ways, and this sounds funky sometimes when you first say it, you can't have anything invested in the outcome because you have no control over the outcome. Now, you can have a great deal invested in what you do in hoping that there'll be a good outcome. But at the end of the day, just as you're saying, that person might get up at the end of your event and say, I'm not donating anything. That's their choice. It doesn't mean you weren't really good at what you did.
That was actually that has been one of the biggest challenges, because of my empathetic being, right? Is, we just didn't raise what we should. Did I not do my job well?
Right.
And so talk about laying my feelings on the table and being vulnerable with you. But it's interesting because you're right. I did the same job. And even my staff will say, Shelly, you never change 10% good or 10% bad.
Right.
You are always in your zone, right?
Right.
So it is interesting, though, because we do get blamed a lot for not raising the money. But, that, too, is just human nature.
That's it. And I was just going to say that, anytime you're doing any interaction with human beings, there's a level of complexity that gets in the way of predicting an outcome.
Yeah. And it's like listening to music. Some music you love, some you don't.
Yeah. Right. So all you can do is walk in the room and trust that I've worked really hard to develop my skills. Evidence seems to be I'm good at what I do. But being good at what I do does not always mean that I have, it never means I have control over the total outcome.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And that goes back to the question you asked a little while ago is what does it take to be a good auctioneer?
Right.
And that is the ability to understand that.
Yeah. So another level of helping, in addition to the work you do with organizations as an auctioneer, another level of helping that you're involved in, and you mentioned it a few moments ago, is that you work and you teach and you mentor folks who want to do what you do. So talk a little bit about those kinds of services that you offer folks.
So I have trained a few auctioneers who have gone on to become really successful independent auctioneers. And I love hearing them and watching them and watching their path. For nonprofits and schools and religious organizations, I took all of my depth of knowledge from marketing and all the way through my auction career. And I put it into a easily to digest online course. Right. So that organizations have some high-level strategy to begin benchmarking their fundraising. And the first module is the psych of fundraising, and it's all about demographics, buying behaviors, spending abilities, your organization, and how to create donor magic. The second module is all about storytelling and how to source your stories and what the continuity of a presentation means and how to produce it, and then what to do with your story once it's completed. Then we talk about event merchandising. It's not just I'm going to do an online auction or I'm going to do a in-person auction or a virtual auction. It's what are the pieces and parts? What are the tactics that organizations can implement that meet their audience values, likes, and dislikes so that you can engage them on a greater level? And then production, how to really produce your event so that it feels so authentic and smooth, but it's highly produced, right? The better an event is produced, the more authentic it feels because people want to participate in something that they're actively engaged in. So production is huge. And then we finish the course with event chemistry and what chemistry between individuals and a group really looks like.
So what I'm hearing you say, again, for somebody who knows nothing about being an auctioneer, is that of all the skills an auctioneer needs to have, a successful auctioneer needs to have, it sounds like the last one is the ability to speak quickly.
Well, that is one style. That is absolutely one style. There are art auctioneers. Thank you very much. May I have another $100,000? There are, in fact, the auctioneers that I used to train, I would take them to in Colorado, we have a stock show typically every year. And I would take them to the cattle auctions because those auctioneers, I'm at a penny, I'm at 5 penny, I'm at 2 penny, I'm at 3 penny, I'm at 5 penny, I'm at 5 penny, I'm at 2 penny. And I'm sitting there looking at that with big eyes going, how much are they charging? Where are they at? So not even I can understand them.
Right.
And then you have the car auctioneers that are loud and energetic and fast, and I can't really understand them either. So having that cadence and that bid call is really important.
Yeah.
I'm in the center. I'm not a championship auctioneer, but I have a good cadence and I can roll with the R's and I can speak fast and run my numbers, but people will always understand what dollar amount I'm at.
Right.
And for what we do in charity, that's really important.
Yeah. Yeah. And so you also have in your information this, because I just so love the name, Badass Public Speaking.
Yes.
So I'm assuming a whole nother kind of area of training and expertise that you offer folks.
Well, you know, what's really interesting about that is much of the training I do in the nonprofit and event world translates really seamlessly into the business world.
Yeah.
And it's understanding your audience. It's storytelling. It's making sure you've merchandised your event, whether it's your own event or you're going to someone else's event, right? And understanding what the goals are, producing your own presentation, and then creating chemistry with whoever you are speaking with. So I coach, counsel, train individuals in speaking so that they can be better equipped to complete their goals in their business world and in their business life so that they can emerge as a leader in their specific field by speaking at events, by writing those white papers, and by really presenting themselves as the expert in their field.
Beautiful. So I have a couple of other questions as we start heading to the end of the hour. One of the, and you've talked about this in a variety of ways, but I'm going to ask you this really specifically, because to me, one of the cornerstones of being a really good helping person is to be strength-based, is to interact with people and look for strength and look for capacity. But that before we do that with the people that we work with or that we help, we need to be able to do it with ourselves. So tell me, Shelly St. John, a few of your most profound strengths, positive attributes, positive characteristics.
Oh, golly. I don't think I'm the right person to ask, right? I think that for people that know me really well, and I hear from others, is one, as we spoke of, the optimism.
Yeah.
Two, I have the ability to see where I want to go, and I will continue failing until I succeed.
Powerful.
I am kind. I am a listener. And when I love hard. When I care hard. And I am loyal and committed as the day is night.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that with us. If someone is listening and is thinking this would be a really cool gig, above and beyond giving you a call and engaging you as a coach and mentor, what would be your words of wisdom to somebody who is thinking about entering this field as a career?
So that's a multi-leveled answer. When you're thinking of from a nonprofit's perspective, for someone who's planning an event, to the individual that thinks maybe I do want to be an auctioneer, or the business person that thinks, I've kind of stymied in my career. I either need to step it up or make a change. I think to look within about what you really, really want.
Yeah.
Not what you've got, not what you think you can do, but if everything was open and you had no roadblocks to accomplishing anything, what would you want to do? What I want to do is, just to give you context, in 5 years, I want to be a travel writer for the over 55 set and go to every beach in the world I can get to and review beach massages.
Oh my God, does that sound wonderful?
That's my end of life job.
All right? Last chapter.
That's right. But I share that so that doesn't seem like something I'm even into, right? But figure out what it is you want to do, and then figure out what your currently doing and how you might be able to move into that, right? I think that's the same for anyone. And there are so many opportunities for training, reading, videos. So just go trying on people, watch some YouTube videos, read some books, and go to some meetups and talk to other people about how they've accomplished what you think you might want to accomplish.
Right.
But the final word of advice is never be afraid to fail and never, ever give up.
Yeah. You know, the question I sometimes use in similar kinds of conversations with folks is what would you do if the only guaranteed outcome was that you were 100% successful? Because I shouldn't say it amazes me, because I've been doing this work for a long time. Sometimes I guess it just kind of continues to startle me, is how limited many of us are in our thinking about ourselves. So even what you just said, Shelly, about like, just keep doing it, no matter how many times you fail, for lack of a better word, learn from that, get up and keep moving. That is tremendously difficult for a lot of people to they might say, yeah, I kind of get it in concept, but to put that mindset into action is really hard for a lot of folk.
You know, a friend of mine said, and I've known them for 15 years, since my life change in 2005. And they saw me having my marketing company and deciding to be an auctioneer. And they've watched me, you know, ebb and flow through my successes as an auctioneer. And she said to me a couple of weeks ago, she said, you know, Shelly, this all doesn't surprise me, because even when you decided to become an auctioneer, we thought maybe that was going to be a hobby for you. And I'm like, well, I never thought of it as a hobby. Right? And now that I'm moving into some other things in my career, she said the same thing. She goes, you are bound to be successful because you just won't let the grass grow underneath your feet. You just keep moving forward.
Right. That's awesome.
Harder said than done, but if you can get there, you will feel and reap the reward in multiple ways.
Right. Look, yes, it's hard, and it's not a guarantee that you will always get everything you want. But sometimes I think, all right, so what's the alternative to the mindset? The only alternative is to think less of yourself and to think in a really limited way about what you're capable of, which probably means that there will be moments in your life that you will be in a place of regret. I tend to believe that us human beings rarely, if ever, maybe, as we get to the end stages of our life, rarely, if ever, regret things we did. Even if the things we did messed up, because we learned from it. Regret usually comes in the form of the things we didn't do.
Oh, I completely agree. In fact, I'm going to take that on as one of my New Year's thoughts. Because resolutions, no. But New Year's thoughts. I think.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, that's awesome. Shelly St John, thank you so much for spending some time with me today. This was a wonderful conversation, eye-opening. I will never look at an auctioneer the same. And now, not only that, but the next time I'm in front of an auctioneer, I'm going to be listening differently for how they do what they do, and beyond speaking fast, because you've shed light on this whole other piece, thoughtful, competence-based piece of how to walk out in front of people and be successful in the art of auctioneering.
That's right, in the performance of that. Yep.
Yeah. And that alone, yes, even that. I don't know if I would have, before our conversation today, I don't know if I would have thought of the word performance, but yes, it is. And it is storytelling, and it's everything you have talked about that is wonderfully insightful for me. Thank you so much. This was great.
Oh, it's been a pleasure. I appreciate you and your time today.
Awesome. Thanks so much. And I wish you all the best.
Oh, absolutely. Happy New Year. Happy 2021. And, my thought for 2021 is that if we can just get through this first part of the year without any new, pandemics or any new world situations, that we can just make it through, and then we can figure out what that new life is going to be on the other side.
No question. No question. Let's hope that happens. And maybe by the end of 2021, we'll be in a really, really good place. So
absolutely.
Thank you so much. All the best to you, Shelly.
You too. Have a wonderful day.
So I thank you all for spending this time with us. I hope you enjoyed the conversation. I hope it was as eye-opening for you as it was for me. I'm quite serious about it. I will never look at an auctioneer the same.
Absolutely. The parallels that you drew between what you do on the clinical side and what I do on the entertainment side.
It's the same.
I had never really thought of it that way.
It is the same. We're using the same skill set, same thoughts, because it's all about authentically connecting with people, whether it's a person or a small group or, a very large audience. So I hope everybody who was listening today found that interesting and appreciates the connections that we talked about. And that at the end of the day, helping people, there are just so many parallels and skills and competencies that are the same, regardless of the shape or form in which you help others. And when we talk about this, we are talking about not only professional helpers, but volunteers, being a good friend, a parent, right? Whoever it is that is just in that moment of being asked to help another person. So this was great. And for those of you that are at all interested in maybe making further contact with Shelly about her services or about any of her training, on whatever platform you are listening to this podcast, there is a written description of this episode, and in that description will be all of Shelly's contact information. And so please reach out to her if you'd like to continue the conversation with her. So again, Shelly, thank you so much. Enjoy the Midwest, and I hope we connect again soon.
That'll be lovely. Have a great day.
All right, everybody. Thank you again for making the time. I so appreciate it. I know people are busy, and I'm thankful when you sit in with us to be a part of this conversation. So keep an eye on us. Come back again for the next episode. And join us as we continue to shine a light on the skill and talent of those individuals, people like Shelly, that invite another into that compassionate, complex, and intimate space called the helping conversation. Have a great day, everyone.
We thank you for sitting in on our discussion today on just one unique version of the Helping Conversation. We would love to hear your thoughts on today's podcast, so we sincerely invite you to follow, rate, and most importantly, review our episodes. For more information on Keith Greer and this podcast, log on to keithgreercoaching.com. Please join us for our next episode as we continue the exploration and celebration of the practice, art, and science of the Helping Conversation.